You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
I am in one of the few neighborhoods, I think, of Boston that doesn't have a university in it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's funny how Boston loses, I think, a population of 2 to 3 million when students leave.
Oh, easily.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's like one of the largest college towns in the country, right?
Yeah. And it didn't fully hit me until I moved out here initially in Somerville, which is, around Cambridge. And gosh, that place is dead.
Yeah.
Somerville used to be a trashy.
Slummerville. Yes, that's what they used to call it. Yeah.
It's awesome. Summer's here. I can finally drink some beers in peace. Now that everybody's going home.
What was that arcade? They had an arcade there where I used to be in a metal band way back in the day. And we used to play in this arcade in Somersville. It was huge. And it was the biggest venue. Godsmack played there and shit. All sorts of big bands used to play there. Anyway.
Kaleem, do I strike you as somebody who has attended even a single metal show?
Yes, actually, I was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Because I in my mind.
Rock on.
Yeah,
All
look at your face. I felt like there's some pent up aggression in there. So I was just he's definitely into that shit.
This guy's legit.
I've seen some shit. All right.
Yes, I've seen some shit.
I've seen some shit, Bob. Cool, haven't you?
Cool. Yeah.
Here we are again. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Remotely We Are One. I'm your host, Rick Haney, and joined by my esteemed colleague, Colleen Clarkson. What's going on?
Man, I'm feeling great today, man. I mean, the light's good, the sun's shining.
You're very shiny.
Oh, I am shiny. I put my lotion on before we got on. We are fab today, bro.
Properly moisturized. It's a key element.
Hey, if you've listened to the show, we've talked about properly moisturizing all the time.
I say almost every episode it comes up. I don't know why. I love that it does, but whatever. I mean, we ought to get paid by Carry Lotion, royalties and shit.
Holy shit. We need to get on this, man. We need to get on this. Definitely.
Yeah.
Any listeners out there, if you know anybody or any type of lotion companies, let us know. We're available for sponsorships.
It's a lucrative industry for sure.
Indeed it is. We have more on that subject. We might even play that in the B-roll.
Yeah, we talked about whether that's a private thing in one episode, right?
We didn't get into, in the pre-roll, anything about scented lotions, but that might come up too.
Maybe.
Because scents are an integral part of a good lotion.
Yeah, next to printer ink, I think the scented sort of colognes and all of that are the highest cost per volume liquid.
I think there's a market for scented printer ink myself. But
I'm sorry, do you read documents on paper still, Rick?
Document?
Do you read documents on paper still, Rick? We're on a remote show, sir. You don't read paper documents.
PDFs, my man. Welcome. Yeah. Yes, you can convert your PDF to paper if you need, but
Whoa, let's pump the brakes here, okay? I mean, I'm not I'm not what you might consider tech knowledgeable. Okay.
Just you hold your words on paper document.
Okay.
You know what? All right. Teach their own.
Fair enough. Yeah, geez. Well, anyway, as you can already see, we've got an exciting show. We're going to be talking about other things other than scents and printed paper and whatnot. I hope, anyway, right, Colleen?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm excited about today's guest. Again, what's great about today's guest, though, is he's representing Boston and another New Englander. We didn't even know that. It just kind of feels like every single time we get someone on here, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm in Boston, or I'm in LA, but I'm from this area. It's just, New England, sorry, all you people that hate the Patriots. I'm not a Patriots fan either, but look, they're everywhere. So he's representing Boston. He's a lifelong New Englander. Another interesting thing is he has a twin brother. which is cool. I mean, twins are cool.
To some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did you play tricks on people? All the typical twins questions that you get, I'm curious about. He recently has gotten into listening to soundtracks and movie scores, and he recommends listening to the SimCity 4 sound score. So give it a try. What do you think? It's good.
Yeah, no. So people think I'm kidding when I say this, but seriously, if you go on Spotify and you listen to SimCity 4, the soundtrack, it's banging. Seriously, you will. That's 6 hours of focused work right there. You'll jolt awake at the end of it and be like, oh my God, I finished everything.
I'm definitely trying it right after this episode, guy. I got some shit to do. So SimCity 4, give it a try on Spotify. Take a listen. And then last but not least, he is the co-founder and VP of Customer Experience at Robin. Listeners, viewers, please give a warm welcome to Zach Dunn. Let's do this, dude.
Hello.
Dude.
Hello. Happy to be here, guys.
So glad you're here.
Oh, thank
We got a
you,
lot to
thank
learn, don't we, Kaleem?
you. We do. We do.
Yeah. So in that vein, Zach, tell us a little bit about the spark that created Robin, a little bit about your background that led up to where you are now.
Yeah. As Kaleem mentioned in the intro, I am a twin. And the two of us have always been into the technology side of the hall. And what that's meant is that we basically started a business right out of college where we would make websites and stuff for other people. You've heard that story probably a dozen times before from other people. That's not the interesting part. But what was interesting was over time, a lot of people saw what we were doing and they started asking us for more kind of specific things than just websites. And that included like, hey, how can you bring some digital stuff that used to just only be on my website and Facebook and bring it into like real world events and all of that. So we got our first company back in the day was all about bringing like digital experiences into events. Like you would walk around an event with your RFID wristband, screens would change at like music festivals and things like that to react to who was like nearby. And over time, we really fell in love with this idea that we could do the same for the workplace. Make the workplace itself, the office, become this thing that not just a place you go to, but also a tool that actually helped you get your work done. And so that was really the genesis of Robin, our current company, which over the last 8 years has been helping companies introduce and adopt flexible work. And over the last couple of years, as you both know, that's really synonymous with hybrid work and remote work. And so we have a lot of customers, a lot of organizations that we work with who are for the very first time reckoning with, hey, I got to take this remote thing seriously. How do I integrate that into my thinking? And that's where we come in as well.
Interesting.
Wow.
So was it a specific customer or just multiple customers that kind of brought you to this realization? And then, we've all been web developers before, myself included. I think even Rick's dabbled a little bit in creating some sites and stuff. So do you remember, like, was there a specific moment that you remember that was just like, dude, I'm sick of dealing with this. We got to come up with this concept. Or was it just more along the lines of, hey, let's try to solve this general challenge that we've noticed? Was there a specific moment that you remember or no?
So we made a conference table that when you sat at it, it booked itself and lit.
Whoa. What do you mean?
So we had a woodshop guy, friend of ours, that just had this story. So we were like, hey, can you make us a conference room table that has some tech embedded in it? So we basically had a conference room table that had its own API. This was right at the very beginning of like Internet of Things hype train.
Roughly what year is this?
Oh gosh, this was like probably 10 years ago. So
oh
like
my gosh,
2012, let's say.
Fascinating. Okay.
And so basically the reason why we did that was we kind of tried to live at the time this idea of everything in our office was programmable. And this was like our own sandbox for some of those things that we would do out there in the wild, like those events, right? Because trouble with music festivals, as great as they are, they only last and exist for like 2 to 3 days at a time. So you can't exactly like, you need a different sandbox, right? You can't do it all at the festival. So we would make our office into that. And over time, people would come and meet with us at the office and they'd be like, the heck is this thing do? And so it went viral for a little while. We had a blog post, and then we were invited to MiaCon, which if you're having visceral reactions to what that is, don't worry, it's not what you think. It's the architecture and design's basically like big event every year where they have all the furniture, the design folks meet in Chicago. And then we were invited by one of those manufacturers to come out and start talking about kind of this idea of tech embedded furniture. Wow. And what that meant for the future of work. Wow. And then a lot of people started asking us to do that for them too. And
so butts and seats, and it automatically would book, like, reserve the tech. So yeah, by the way, that conference definitely could use some consulting. NeoCon is not a good conference name. They didn't really think that through. I'm just saying.
They've been around long enough where I think they have naming rights, even if they've been co-opted, right? Sure. But yes, it's like what Archer had to rename ISIS after the first few seasons. The TV show.
Probably should rename that.
It's interesting because sorry to interrupt, but I bought a car and I didn't sign a single sheet of paper. We sat at this desk that I just thought was a glass table. And all of a sudden, this thing just turns up at me with this bright light. And I look down and the table is a screen. And I signed all of my documents on this table that I just thought was a normal desk. And my mind was blown. I was like, what?
That kind of integration, I think, is like, when done well, very tasteful.
Very tasteful. Yeah. So, Zach, can you tell us a little bit about, now I love the story. Now I can visualize you sitting at this table and it booking itself. Can you tell me a little bit more about what Robin's biggest feature is? Because I think that's kind of like a natural progression to a big part of your product. So what's the big feature in Robin that people are really enjoying that are solving this challenge of where am I supposed to be?
So the problem that we solve is hybrid work right now, full stop. And the way to solve it is software, less so on the woodworking and conference room. We've retired that area of the business years ago, / never gotten into it to begin with, thankfully. Overhead costs are just through the roof. Cool when you can get it right, though. So for the first, let's say, 4 or 5 years of Robin, basically we were helping people book conference rooms, manage conference rooms, right? And for a lot of companies, this is a big issue. If you worked in an office, fighting over conference rooms, pre-pandemic, bigger deal. A lot of people knew us as the iPad outside of the conference rooms. If you saw one of those, odds are it was us. If not, we would love to meet them and fix that. But in recent years, we also got into other parts of the office, like desk reservations and helping people adopt more flexible seating arrangements. And as you might imagine, that was eerily timed for hybrid work in the pandemic. So we had just launched that probably a year before the pandemic hit. And then, well, if I had known, I would have told somebody, right, about the pandemic side of it. Not exactly fantastic market research, right? But really, so the two of those together, like, a lot of the problem that hybrid work introduced to these organizations was that it required them to go from, if you have like a developer background, from like waterfall development approach to office development, where like you maybe have 1 or 2 major changes every few years, to like this agile model of like, there's small incremental changes you can make and should make to your office on a weekly basis. But that challenges a lot of the infrastructure and systems they have in place, because you have to let your people make those decisions. It's like changing your seat every day. And so we help companies of all sizes do that. And well, we've been busy recently, as you might imagine.
I'm sure you have.
Definitely. I'm definitely sure you have. Yeah.
Since we're on the subject, how would you, in your own words, for our listeners, define the term hybrid?
Ooh,
Zach. Okay.
Mr. Dunn.
We can fight over this, but no. I think that when you're introducing people to new concepts, it's very important to not be too precious about the apps, like the terms themselves. But I look at hybrid as it's a flexible working strategy, and it's one where the office and somewhere else, remote, whatever you call that,
yes,
are both equal partners in your overall workplace.
Equal partners.
And so
I like that.
Yeah.
I say that at the organization level because a lot of people hear that as like, oh, so you want people spending 50% of their time in the office? 50%? No, because people have different jobs. And the types of work that they choose to bring to an office may be very different based on that job. And the office may not make sense every day. And in fact, we know it doesn't because the average person only uses it in those environments on average 2 days a week. And that's A-okay.
Yeah.
So it's that mix, hitting that balance and making sure that you have a workplace which is not just synonymous with an office. A workplace is anywhere that you work. Every company has one, and it spans all of the offices, the kitchen tables, the home offices, and the Starbucks up the street for some companies. And so workplace is really an expanding definition that enables hybrid work, in my opinion.
Outstanding.
Boom.
Now, folks, I don't know if you're paying attention here, but this is like the first step, as Robin would say, putting people before places.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to respond, but like you just threw so much good knowledge right there. Like I liked your definitions of number one, you didn't use remote, which is interesting. Although, you know, if it's not in the office, I can understand people would consider it being remote. But I just really love that you didn't go there. But then I also love the idea that you're using the word workplace. And the word workplace does not necessarily mean office. That's just a really, really cool angle. So I got kind of a follow-up question because you're in the space of making hybrid remote work well, right? That's what or hybrid work, sorry. You're in the space of making that work very well. And you have some great clients just to, you know, we have big guests here, people. You know what I'm saying? Like we just don't bring on any person, do we, Rick?
Never.
Yeah, I mean, these are just a couple of the clients that they've worked with. I mean, and you're just all chill, Zach. Like, no big deal, man. No big deal. We work with Toyota. Yeah, it's cool. They're cool people. You know, we work with Hulu, Peloton, Crocs, TripAdvisor. And you're just sitting there chilling. You know, you're just sitting there chilling.
They all got the same problem. Happy to help. Happy to help.
Happy to help. Yeah. And guess what? If you're a small business and you have this challenge, you can still use their products. So don't be scared off by those big logos. So the question I have for you, Zach, obviously we're on a podcast here, Remotely We Are One. We're talking about the importance of remote work, everything to deal with remote work. What is your thought on this idea and this concept of remote first being a operational model that increases the chances of success of a hybrid remote workspace? So that's what we're talking a lot about as consultants, as experts, that you can implement a hybrid workplace. But if you're not considering the people who are not in the office, like you have to design something that's going to work for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on that idea of the concept of remote first?
Personally, I'm a big believer. Where I see people get tripped up on it sometimes is in what remote means. Because for some folks, in the same way that if I said workplace to them, they immediately think, oh, you mean office, right? A lot of people might hear remote as, so you're working from home. And that's not always the case either. True. Like in many cases, it can be really confusing to talk to folks who may be using remote in the term of somebody working somewhere else from where I am. And this actually happens in like mid to large size companies too, because you realize that they face many of the same problems for talking between offices. People in office. Like your London office and your Boston office, they have to work together. Is that person in London remote? To me, yes, it's a matter of perspective. We could get all philosophical about it. But I think getting that remote first mentality, that culture, that strategy in place equally helps that sort of situation, because it means that your company is well equipped to be able to have like collaborative conversations, constructive conversations without all having to physically be in the same room. And I think that's the value. Where the other people are, can be home, other office, doesn't matter. But I think that kind of like, let's optimize for people not being in the same place, totally on board.
Wow.
Well, let me just read the room here. So like, what do you all think?
Whoa.
Yeah.
You go first, Rick. I've been talking a lot. You go first.
I lost what I was going to say. I hate it when that happens.
To the best of us.
I'm only human.
Well, you think about it. I got something before I forget. I think the biggest challenge when we're talking with companies, I don't know. I feel like in general, society has this challenge where, like, for example, like, and I won't get too political, but it's the only thing I can think of, like Black Lives Matters, for example. People are like, well, all lives matter. It's like, no shit. We're putting the emphasis on that for a reason. We're focusing on that thing for a purpose. Of course, fucking all lives matters, man. That's just a focus. Same with the term of remote first, I feel like is in that same vein. And a lot of times when we're talking with companies who are hybrid by the pandemic, organizations who are forcefully going hybrid and really don't want to invest in the hybrid model, when we start talking about remote first, they're like, whoa. Well, like, what about all the employees in the office? We can't just forget about them. We can't forget about the employees in the office because the office is the office is the office. No, we're not doing remote. We're not doing remote, actually. We're just doing hybrid. And it takes a lot of patience, which I don't have a ton of, but I try, to explain to them, no, this is an operational model. Maybe a location independent work experience might be a better term to get people in there. But the idea of prioritizing your remote employees first, it puts everything on an equal playing field because now you have information that everyone can get access to if you're in the office. I just feel like the definition is actually a challenge, but 100% a requirement in order to make hybrid remote work. So I don't know. I think it's sometimes people get tripped up on terms, right?
Yeah, I think that, look, in my mind, it boils down to you can choose to value people by valuing the work that they're doing first, or you can try to value the place that they're doing it. And those things all often are in conflict. So if all things being equal, I would much rather value the work first and then give people the tools to be able to decide where that work happens best. And I don't see how in today's world you would be able to do that successfully if you have an office-centric mindset.
Mindset. That's what I was going to go after earlier. When I
See?
lost my,
I knew it.
When I lost my mindset.
You always come back, bro. You always come back, brother.
I always do. It doesn't happen right away because, the engine's running, but whatever.
Yeah.
Talk about mindset for a second, especially when it applies to managers and to an extent companies in general who are just absolutely unwilling or unable to adjust to this business model of hybrid work. Do you see a lot of that?
We do see friction. And I think like there are people who think that this is an experiment still, or it was a fun little detour. But now we're getting back to the real, how the workplace is supposed to be, right? And that's where I think people are going to be a little bit behind if they keep that mindset. I try to meet people where they are on this. And the reality is that a lot of the people who are in those leadership positions, those manager positions, the workplace that they're most familiar with and that they built their skills against looked very different than the one they're in now. So they probably, if they're trying to coach the next generation of folks in how to succeed in a workplace that looks nothing like theirs, gosh, that's hard. And so I understand that tension, but I also know that we have an enormous capacity for change in the working world. There was a time where having a laptop from your company was considered a perk.
Right.
Like a privilege, right? Like it would be on people's like job descriptions. Like, we will issue you a laptop.
So and, like, cool, a laptop.
Think about that. Like the idea that you would be issued a laptop was once like, oh my gosh, I might apply for this job over another one, right?
Right.
I challenge you to find many job posts, if any, that still include stuff like that. That's just like standard operating procedure, right?
Yeah. You're already seeing it, Zach. You're totally right. You're already seeing it, right? If you go on LinkedIn right now and do this, listeners, do your own testing. Type in whatever position you want, right? Then filter it by on-site. click on that position and see how many applications there are. Then do the same thing and then unfilter the on-site and then filter it by remote. Click on the same title and position and then look how many applicants there are. Zach, I'm on your team, bro. I think if you do not take this as an opportunity to, back to Rick's question, to change your mindset, to embrace growth mindset versus this is the way it's always been done, you are going to be left behind. Everyone thought that this was just like you said, Zach, an experiment. Not even close. So I have one last question before Rick's question. Where do you see the purpose of the office moving forward? I think that is where everyone's stuck. Listen, we all know that some of the motivations for companies requiring people to go back to the office is they've invested 10 years in their lease and there's some sunk cost. They've invested in like cafeterias, all this shit in their office, so they want people to use it. But like once that period gets over, and we're already seeing people, I think Google or somebody brought Lizzo in for a concert and like nobody showed up still.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I think this just came out recently. Like
she's very talented, so that's a shame.
I mean, I
would have attended.
I would have attended. But still, they're like, look, bro, you can bring in whoever you want. We're not driving through, San Francisco traffic to get there. So anyway, where do you see the purpose of the office? And because you have so many of these companies using your tools, what are you kind of seeing trend-wise?
So before all the pandemic, this would have been probably flagged under this broad term of activity-based work. I don't know if this is something that you've stumbled on before, but like it kind of was like emerging over the last decade. And it basically is the idea, hey, you can design office space to support work and the types of activities that people are doing instead of just head count. And I'll give you an example. For many, many decades, office design basically was predictable that every time you hire a person, you also hire a desk for that person. And desks, they take up space. And so you could basically plot over time the impact that hiring 100 people would have on your space, because all of them would need desks. And then you end up with an office, which is 80, 90% desks, 10% conference rooms. And then that's the ratio. Those are two modes of work. But the reality is there's a lot of people who don't need a desk. Managers use those as lockers, etc. And so activity-based work, you might say, what is the type of work that people are doing day to day? And most people cycle through a handful. So you might replace some of those desks with like open seating, couches, huddle areas for like longer brainstorming sessions. You might install call booths for solo focused work from the sales team talking to people externally. And the way that you allocate your space matches the work of the people who are using the space.
Right.
In hybrid, that means that there's certain work that the best place to do it is no longer in the office, like solo focused work. And so you can remove that from the equation if you want, or at least reduce it.
Okay.
And so what work do people bring to the office? Like collaborative work is a good one. Like we work with plenty of teams who they've agreed, hey, every couple of weeks, we're going to bring everyone together to like do sprint planning in person, and then we're going to break, right? That's the sort of stuff that I think people are going to find the office for. It's not that people are going to say, on Tuesdays, I go into the office. It's going to be, we do sprint plannings in person. And that's what brings me to the office. Wow,
great answer. Yeah, I agree with you.
Fascinating.
It is.
What a time.
What a time. Also, I think conference type, personally, I feel like the office is going to become the conference space and the clubhouse. Just say what it is. We go to the office to hang out and talk shit and hang out with friends. In my opinion, I just think every office should be like, you know what, we're going to create a bar, we're going to create a playground, we're going to add a family fun room, and we're going to get together all this time. Because really, like, for a lot of industries, I think Laurel has said this before, or somebody made this definition, if you can do 75% of your work on a computer, you can be remote. It's a lot of people.
That makes sense.
It's a lot of people. So anyway.
Yeah. So Zach, if you would, share with us a time or memorable experience you had while working hybrid, something funny, something inspiring, whatever sticks out in your memory.
Ooh, maybe a hybrid experience. We haven't done that one yet.
No.
So not everyone realizes I'm a twin. Okay. And
this is
when you're remote,
like
there are some challenges with that, right? Because you'll join calls and you may not realize that hypothetically your twin brother just left that call, and that not everybody is fully aware that that changeover happened. So you just seem like you have amnesia. And
Okay.
I have had that happen on more than one occasion.
Collective amnesia.
Where sometimes customer call, like, way back. And then so I think that there is it's easier certainly in person to reconcile that. But then, I've definitely joined some calls where people are like, we just talked about this. So I always check the invite list. No.
That is so great. So can we dig a little bit into that, just talk about this? So was it something where the person was getting agitated? Because for me, it's hard to hide my expressions on camera. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you exactly what would happen if that happened to me. I'd be like, yeah, so, we're going to talk about that. And you ask that question, I'll be like, you can't see me, everybody, but I'm sitting here going, what's this guy's problem? Did we just fucking talk about that, bro? I would be ripping you on mute, and people would see my face and they would message me all the time. So was this person visibly agitated, or were they just kind of oh, well, we talked
Confused.
about it and it was a nice one? Because I am visibly agitated.
I think there were specific words where I might have been muted earlier, but I thought I just asked you this. And I think, look, my brother and I, we learned early on in as early as high school, right? So if we're not careful, one of the side effects of being a twin and on phone calls where there's not always the video isn't super visible, mm-hmm. is that your voices sound the same if you don't make a conscious effort to make it sound different.
Holy shit, I never thought about it. Even your voices sound the same?
So we would learn that if we were both on a similar call, whatever, one of us would have to be overly animated and have a head voice almost, where we're intentionally talking with a different cadence. And the other one might be a little slower, lower, gravelly. And because you have to create that distance in between otherwise it just sounded like the same person was having a conversation with themselves.
I'm disappointed we didn't have you both on, bro. I'm disappointed we didn't have
you both on. Maybe you did.
Could have been great. We did. Were we even talking to Zach right now, bro?
Wouldn't that be? So look, it's one of those things that it really wasn't until the pandemic that we had a few of those kind of you thought that we already talked, didn't you?
Wow, that is fantastic. Wow, that is so funny. Zach Dunn, thank you so much for sharing all of your information with us. It has been very entertaining as well as educational. Yes. Where can our listeners find you if they were to go online and look for you?
Robinpowered.com is where I'd start, especially if you're interested in hybrid work and haven't quite figured it out yet. We got some folks who would love to help you with that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Absolutely. We definitely want to have you back on, both of you, because I think it would be a great show. And you know what, Zach, if you're bored, you might want to just write down some jokes and try to get up on stage and see what happens, bro. I think you do all right.
You're very kind. Kind.
Let me know when you have your first show. I'll fly out.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do better than Lizzo, huh?
That's awesome.
Let's hope so.
Good stuff, man. Thanks a lot for coming on. We'll talk to you.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.